don't want to say that I'm retired because fighting's in my blood. Right now, I could really care less about fighting.
What would it take to fight Tom Aspinall from the UFC? Like, what does the UFC got to do?
Said something real wild on off the cuff. I'll see you guys later.
That's it.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for the happy
Jon
beer.
Jones, the legend.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing well. So as we saw, Jon Jones just walked out of that interview for Send podcast. Just walked out of the interview after a final question about Tom Aspinall. Just really wanted to react to that and just, really enough is enough with this, Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall situation. Jon Jones fought, I don't even know how long ago now. And really, the talks about Tom Aspinall, they're getting boring. They're getting boring. It's the same old questions. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that UFC is not normally the sport I talk about most on this channel, but just tell me one time that Jon Jones has ever shown any interest in that fight. He's not shown any. He's pretty consistent. Before his last fight with Stipe Miocic, he's been consistent after his fight with Stipe Miocic. He has not one time mentioned Tom Aspinall's name in a positive way. He just talks down on the fight. And it's just clearly something that he just doesn't want. He doesn't want it. And again, he did not want it before Stipe and he did not want it after. Pretty much saying that, Tom Aspinall, it's not a fight that excites him. He's an up and coming guy and, really it's not something on his radar. Jon Jones, not even in training, drinking and, doesn't look in any sort of shape. And it's actually come to the point where, at this stage right now, I don't even really blame Jon Jones for this. I think this happens, in a lot of fighters' careers. If you want to look at boxing, Floyd Mayweather, for example, he was getting up in age. There were up and coming guys like Earl Spence. He didn't want those matchups. What did he do? He went for the Andre Berto and Robert Guerrero, those guys. He finished his career with that Conor McGregor fight. So, I understand where Jon Jones is coming from. 37, 38 years of age. Is the up-and-coming guy, the loudmouth. It's actually quite similar to Carl Froch against George Groves. Carl Froch, is the established guy, 36 years of age, multi-time world champion. George Groves had never fought at elite level, calling out Carl Froch and also questioning his resume. And Carl Froch was just almost annoyed by him. But George Groves was a mandatory. Carl Froch took that fight. There was a first fight and then the rematch. And actually, Carl Froch is really remembered by those two fights. Carl Froch had a tremendous career, but that final fight at Wembley, that's really what he's known for. And, Carl Froch is that warrior. Jon Jones, look, I think it would, if he were to take the fight against Aspinall and win, he would just get so much credit for that. And, I think a lot of people think that Jon Jones is the best MMA fighter of all time. But a win over Tom Aspinall, it almost just becomes undisputed at that point. You've never, lost a fight. You haven't, no fighters ever beat you. And, to beat the up and coming guy like that would, just be tremendous. But again, I actually don't even really blame Jon Jones at this time. I'm actually looking towards Dana White because I just don't even know what Dana White is doing. This is just completely holding up the heavyweight division. What is going on with Tom Aspinall? He's just literally sitting around. And he's sitting around at a time where, I don't really think that your business can afford it. I think, UFC right now is struggling to find that next star. I think Khamzat Chimaev is, he's interesting. Ilya Topuria, up and coming guy making a lot of noise. Islam Makhachev, very good fighter, but, is he going to really cross over? The likes of Conor McGregor, Francis Ngannou, Usman, Adesanya, Khabib. These guys are all, if they haven't gone already, then, they're on their way out. So, you really need to, try and, build these, stars and, have these massive fights, and you're just basically, holding up this whole division. You're showing this strange loyalty towards Jon Jones, loyalty that you have not had in the past. And again, no one's sitting there saying, Jon Jones, he's a terrible fighter or he's 100% going to lose. No one's saying that. But you can't just hold up an entire division like this, let alone the heavyweight division, which is always, normally the glamour division in combat sports. So yeah, I'm looking towards Dana White. I think, he should have made a decision a long time ago. what is going to happen with Tom Aspinall? I think Jon Jones, should have just been stripped. If you want to sail off into the sunset and retire, do that. And, I don't even necessarily think you need to make an announcement, but at the very least, have guys, fight for the belt and, keep the division moving. So those are my thoughts. Again, I feel it's a topic I had to discuss. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Please let me know in the comments. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.